The title of my talk today is How Invested Are You? So last week when James was up here talking about, am I awake yet? And I loved what he had to say, asking the question, am I awake yet? But what really struck me more than anything else is when he asked, what are you committed to? And even more so, are you invested? How invested are you? So for my blog this week, I actually wrote about how that impacted me, the word investment. I mean, I'm investing in my retirement. I've invested in schools. I've invested in my education, in my children's education. But how much have I invested in myself? Now, I've invested in myself a lot as far as classes go, as far as this teaching goes. I really feel like I have invested a lot. But how much have I actually invested in knowing who I am and remembering who I am? How much investment, how much time am I putting, how much effort am I putting in remembering that? So I took a second to really reflect about my own personal investment in it. And I invite you guys to do the same, to really think about, what are you investing in? Because what you're investing in is what you're thinking, what you're saying to yourself, what you're saying to others, what you're believing. In the song he sings, and this is why I chose the song, in these bodies we live, in these bodies we die. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. In these bodies we live, in these bodies we die. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. And to me, like I said earlier, love only, love is an energy. Love is not just an emotion, it's an action. It's Lao Tzu says. Where these bodies we live, in these bodies we die, where you invest your love, you invest your life. So where you invest what you love, who you are, that energy of who you are, is what you're expanding in your life. And sometimes I think we sort of doubt, like we don't want to really take a look at what we're investing in, right? Like, no, I didn't invest in that divorce. Or no, I didn't invest in that accident. Or no, I didn't invest in that health issue. And I'm not suggesting that you actively did that. What I'm suggesting is that you put your love into seeing the truth about the situation. The truth about any situation is love. The truth about health, the truth about disease is health. That's the truth. I remember reading in The Science of Mind that the evil is not an entity, it's a fraud. And I love that because so many times we're investing in that fraud as if it is an entity, as if it is an energy, and it's really not. And in so doing, we get understandably sometimes, we get very nervous and scared about what's going to happen next because of a health issue, because of a divorce, because of lack. We start to invest in that. And that is where I'm asking you to really suspend and not go down that rabbit hole, to really take the opportunity to remember who you are and move out of that into the love that you actually are, which is divine, which is whole. Now think about that word. You are divine and you are whole at all times. You are not broken. You are not diseased. You are not lacked. You are whole. But it takes the practice of moving away from that thought to remember who you are. In Thomas Trower, in the Science of Mind, he talks about mental coin, mental equivalent, and mental attitude. Now, I know this is a lot of jargon that we use a lot of times, and we don't stop to explain it. And it's actually a conversation that I'd love to have with Swan, because she said to me once, or as we were having a conversation, she said, we use these words all the time, but we don't really explain what they are. You know, we sort of assume that everybody knows what mental coin is, or mental equivalent, or mental attitude is. So when I'm talking about what your mental coin is, it's what you're thinking. It's what you're believing. That's your mental coin. And your mental equivalent is that which shows up in your life. So it's really, it's transactional if you think about it. When you go to the store and you buy one thing, you're going to get what you pay for, right? If I bought this jacket, I better get this jacket and not something else. But it's my mental coin or my money that purchases it. Same with mental coin. What I invest, what I am thinking, and what I am believing is exactly what's going to show up right back at me, and nothing different. Mental attitude, he says, is this. Faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which it completely accepts, that any contradiction is unthinkable or impossible. Faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which it so completely accepts, that any contradiction is unthinkable or impossible. Now imagine having that type of conviction with everything that you approach. Nothing contradicts what you believe. When you are out and set out to do something, I mean, Karen Wright, perfect example. She set out to do the greater contribution. And look at it now. Right? When you set out to do something, it shows up in your life. It just does. But the operative words here are, any contradiction is unthinkable or impossible. Nothing can sway you off of that. That's the type of investment that I'm talking about. That's the type of investment that I ask you to ask yourself. How invested are you? Are you this invested? Maybe. Maybe not. But I think that's a question that you really need to ask yourself. Is my investment, there is nothing that contradicts it. It is unthinkable or impossible to contradict what I believe is mine to have. And by the way, just so we're clear, all of it is yours to have. It is your birthright. That's the type of belief that we need to have. Not just the car that you want or the house that you want or the family that you want or the job that you want. Yes, that is all possible. But everything, all this abundance in the world out there is for you to have. It's your birthright. That's the type of investment that I'm talking about. And so when I ask about doing this experiential, about really anchoring into remembering who you are, it's for that reason. It's for the reason to start investing in yourself to that capacity. Anchoring in, having that experience of knowing what it feels like when you remember who you are. In my class, and I'm doing an 8-week class, we just did our second week. It's called The Energy of Choice. And we're reading the Jean Houston book, which Amy Shapiro read from this morning during our meditation, which I kind of wish I remembered that was such a beautiful quote from the book. I may ask you for it again. In it, this week I asked the class to do an experiential. And it reminded me of something that Paul Levy said when we were reading his book for our consciousness studies class. The book was Quantum Revelations. And what he said was, you are not just in the universe is in you. Think about that. You are not just in the universe. You are not just in this world. This world is in you. I think when I stop and think about the magnitude of that, again, it gives me pause. And so for the exercise that I asked my students to do in class, and I would invite you guys to do the same, is to go out in nature and look at a tree or the stars or the sun or the clouds. Well, don't look at the sun. That probably wouldn't be very beneficial to your eyes, so don't do that one. But look at the stars and the moon. Look at the trees. Look at something and contemplate it, but really contemplate it. And then imagine that it is contemplating you. Now, I know that sounds very like woo-woo, airy-fairy, like, I don't know. Craig Lincoln's looking at me like, I don't know about that. But I ask that you go out there and have that experience of contemplating the very thing that is contemplating you. Imagine that it is contemplating you. And feel that unity that we talk about. That namaste. that who I am is who you are. When you feel that way with a tree, with the stars, with another person, with an animal, you realize that you can actually have it with your own desires, whatever they may be. I'm right now, I'm going through a little change in my life. And so the reason I'm talking about this contemplating something is because I'm contemplating something big. And I realize that fear pops up in this contemplation, in what my next step is. And it's identifying the fear that comes up when it does come up as I'm contemplating it, because I don't want to I don't want to contemplate fear. I don't want fear to be contemplating me, quite honestly. So I want to remove it from my equation. So the only way that I know how to do that is anchoring into remembering who I am. And then asking the question from there. Investing into that mental attitude of faith that is unstoppable. And so as I contemplate what this next step is going to be, and as I remove the fear from it, and I'm able to see the other side, the beauty of the other side, which quite honestly may not show up that way, but I have to envision that it is a beauty that is propelling me forth, that it is the energy that is feeding my soul, feeding my life, so that I can in turn feed life, feed soul, feed others, and get fed back from that. Because everything is just reciprocal, isn't it? We talk a lot about that when we're in the giving part of service. Everything is reciprocal. Energy is reciprocal. Money is reciprocal. So as I give, I get. As you give, you get. And it's learning how to not to strain that, to keep it in, because then your investment starts to shrink. And what we're looking for is a growth in our investment, right? Like our 401k plans, our retirements, we want a growth in that. But we're only ever going to get out of it as much as we put into it. And so I bring up the relative facts of fear. And again, talking about jargon that we throw out there, relative facts. What is the relative fact? What we talk about relative facts are things that are happening out in the world. These are, tangible things that we see that are going on. The relative facts. But what we really are looking for in ourselves is that absolute truth. Now, the relative facts of what's happening out in the world can be very different from what the absolute truth is. And the absolute truth is that what I'm telling you is, when you remember who you are, it's that unshakable faith of knowing that you are abundant at all times, knowing that you are love at all times, knowing that you are health and creative expression at all times. At all times. That's the unshakable faith. That's contemplating absolute truth. And then there's contemplating the relative facts, which I read somewhere that 70% of what we perceive is through our eyes. So much of what we see is what we perceive. And if so much of what we perceive is in our eyes and that's what we see, then that's what we tend to believe. And it's turning it around so that we believe and know who we are, so that we can change what it is that we see. In Romans 12, it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This is in the Bible. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And again, this is going back to exactly what I'm talking about. The contemplation of the relative facts that are out in the world. That's the pattern. That's the pattern of the world that is out there. It's kind of like an outline. Like here, the world, society, whatever, your family, they've thrown you an outline of what life should be like. Like, here it is, just follow it and you'll be fine. But the truth is, our outline, our personal outline, our outline when we remember who you are, is as distinct as our fingerprints. It's as distinct as the grains of sand, the snowflakes. It is different for every person. And it's finding that which is yours, your pattern to live by, and not the pattern that has been subscribed or has been given to you. And I think so many of us fall asleep and follow this outline of life. I'll speak for myself. I know I have. I've fallen asleep, and I try less and less, as Rumi says, to not go back to sleep so that I remember who I am, so that I experience what I want to experience and not experience someone else's life or dreams or what they think I should be doing. I mean, if I did that, I'd be in San Antonio, Texas, which is a great place to be, by the way. I know my family's watching, and I love them dearly. But I wouldn't have the experiences that I have had throughout this life, which I'm super grateful for. And part of my thinking about or contemplating what Dr. James said last week was saying, how much more of life do I want to experience? I want to experience so much more of life. I really do. I want life to show up in such a grand way. And I know that this is the way to do it. I know that the pattern of my life, which as Romans says, do not conform to the pattern of this world. I don't want to conform. And I don't believe I have for the most part. But I really want to get to my pattern, to my absolute truth, to my knowing, to my individualized expression of what life is. And I think that each and every one of you wants the same thing, or else you wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't be listening. You wouldn't be taking this in, experiencing it for yourself. So how invested are you? Using my ingenuity. Thank you, Jim, for my next quote. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes talks about a divine urge that is pushing us forward. And he says this awakening is a process of evolution, a little here, a little there, until the whole eye is open and we see that life is neither separate from God nor different from good. That's the part that we have to remember, because it's easy to get caught up in saying there's so much going on in this world right now. And there really is a lot going on. But there's nothing separate from God, and there's nothing separate from good. And what is ours to do is to unearth that good in our lives and bring it out into the world, bring it out to others, express it to others so that they too are inspired. Because you have to remember, what you do inspires others. One of the things that I love that Jean Houston asks is, the question that she asked once is, who would you have the privilege of meeting? Who would you want to meet? What would be the privilege of meeting? Who would be the person? And people shouted out all these answers. And then she reminded everyone what Joseph Campbell said, which is, the privilege of a lifetime is to be you. The privilege of a lifetime is to be you. Imagine all the people that inspire us have also been inspired by others. You, every one of you here, inspires people. You really do. So show up in the world as that very inspiration of who you are. I know I get inspired by so many in here. I watch what you do. I hear how you sing. I hear what you say and what you teach. And I'm inspired. I'm inspired to grow and to move. And I think so many of us need to approach the world as the inspiration that we are, right? Invest in who we are, in that inspiration. And I'll leave you with these last two quotes from John Kabat-Zinn, who's an author and a meditation guru. He says this: practice sharing the fullness of your being, your best self, your enthusiasm, your vitality, your spirit, your trust, your openness. Above all, your presence. Share it with yourself, share it with your family, share it with the world. And he also says, trust in your deepest strength of all, to be present, to be wakeful. Trust in your deepest strength, to be present, and to be wakeful. Because when you are present, when you are in this moment, and you're remembering who you are, you can't be anybody else. And you are that love. And you release everything that's happened before you because you're remembering who you are in that present moment, which is your greatest strength. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.